Hello and welcome to Modelled Ads. Today we're going to take a look at the Wargames rule set Skirmish Sangin, authored by Colin Phillips and Craig Waterson and published by Radio Dish Dash and now available direct in the UK. As its name suggests, Skirmish Sangin is a 170-page softbound rulebook focusing on the latest struggle for the hearts and minds of 21st century Afghanistan. Skirmish Sangin is divided into 15 sections and comprehensively illustrated, with photos of games in progress as well as, in the main, Ministry of Defence photographs of British forces during the earlier phases of Operation Telek. Electronic copies are available for an affordable £7.95, hard copies for £25. Generously, there's a downloadable version of the rules for you to try before you buy. The introduction, brief history and playing the game sections set the scene, with authors providing the reader with a brief history of the present-day conflict, tipping their hats in respectful acknowledgement of the armed forces operating in Afghanistan before setting out their conviction to deliver a fun skirmish game built around a strong narrative that can be wrapped up in around 2 hours. Skirmish Sangin is intended to be played with 28mm figures using a scale of 1 inch to 2 metres. Usually on a 2x4 foot square board, with elastic amounts of time divided into phases that allow shooting, hand-to-hand combat, movement, spotting or increments in percentile skills. 10 combat phases make a combat round, an elastic period of time in which these actions are undertaken. Players are encouraged to invest in the narrative of their games through a character creation process when building their force of typically 6 to 10 individuals. Skirmish Sangin isn't an I go, you go type of a game. The higher a character's body score, which is affected by armour, the earlier he gets to use his action points in any of the 10 phases that make up a round. Action points determine how far you can move and what your character chooses to do, and can be used during 4 successive phases within a 10-phase turn. Characters all have the same skills, with different percentage chances of success relative to body times their experience. Forces can be modelled historically or on a points basis. What follows is a breakdown of ISAF, ANA and insurgent forces. Canadian, German and Afghan National Police are available in the recently released Sangin Dispatches No. 1 alongside 7 other scenarios. The next 35 pages are devoted to combat. Combat is determined by the type of weapon used, and there are 4 sequential types: firearms, heavy weapons, hand-to-hand and vehicular. If a target is spotted on a percentile roll subject to over 25 different modifiers for sights, cover or movement, it can be shot at through a second percentile roll subject to 20 plus modifiers, dependent upon the shooter and their target's circumstances, for example moving, in cover or in an elevated position. Irrespective of the outcome, the target makes a morale check if he remains conscious. Weapons are categorised into 11 broad types, which all have their own damage, range, area effect and costs. Hits generate damage from 1d6 for hand-to-hand to 4d10 for a mini-me. Once hit, armour can reduce this damage dependent upon type, with the remainder, if any, being deducted from character's 12 hit points and resulting in a reduction in consciousness as well as effectiveness. A nice touch includes optional rules for ISAF casualty evacuation and or prisoner escort as a result of combat, which trumps the aim of the original scenario and reflects standard operating procedure. Morale is handled on a figure-by-figure basis, with player deciding beforehand how many casualties will break a platoon's will to fight. Percentage morale checks are undertaken when shot at or hit and are subject to cumulative positive and negative modifiers like being in cover, being shot at multiple times or witnessing the death of a colleague. Outcomes can vary from dropping prone, being pinned down, retiring to the nearest cover or, dependent upon the proximity of the enemy, surrendering. Hand-to-hand combat is resolved by comparing base percentage scores determined by the relative experience of the attacker and defender, modified by a number of factors including the number of opponents. Optional rules allow for different types of attack to be made, but at a greater cost in action points, for example breaking away or feinting. Heavy weapons and hand grenades introduce kill zones and damage zones, essentially the effect of being in the centre or on the periphery of an explosion, as well as indirect, area fire and deviation rules. Borrowing further from role-playing games and adding to the sense of narrative are critical hits or fumbles on a natural roll of a 1 or 100. Different effects are generated dependent upon action and a further roll of a d10. A section on vehicle-to-vehicle combat follows, with a caveat that the addition of these rules can seriously upset the play balance of any game. Optional advanced combat rules introduce off-table assets like mortars, snipers, grenade machine guns, fast air and IEDs, to name but a few. An excellent exemplar game walks you through the practical application of the rules with a small firefight that covers just about every eventuality, with, usefully, reference tables that make the outcomes clear. 2 scenarios, Recon Patrol and Compound 17, follow, requiring a limited number of figures but a moderate amount of scenery that won't break the bank. Thoughtfully, the scenarios include pre-roll characters which takes some of the admin out of your initial games. Skirmish Sangin concludes with handy reference sheets, character sheets and counters to assist you with the bookkeeping I've implied, and these are also downloadable from the website. Skirmish Sangin is attractively laid out, well illustrated and written in plain English in an engaging style. Once you've spent some time generating your characters, Skirmish Sangin plays out well, but bookkeeping ensures games are best kept small unless you've multiple players. The combat system neatly reflects the deadly nature of modern warfare, placing the emphasis on the qualities, motivation and training of the men behind the weaponry. I really like the emphasis on storytelling, with factors beyond your control forcing you to respond accordingly. If you want an accessible introduction to modern skirmishing with an evocative sense of place, I can't think of a more affordable place to start. Check out Skirmish Sangin at Salute on stand TH07, and don't forget to pick up some of their excellent Kiwi or Aussie infantry whilst you're there. Recommended.